Well, the Warriors are now 0-3 in Summer League. That's not a good start to the summer for the Golden State Warriors, but there's a lot to discuss about that. Chris Paul had some eyebrow-raising comments regarding his role with the Golden State Warriors, and there's still some free agents out there, and the Warriors still have an open roster spot, maybe even two. We're going to talk about that and so much more next. This is Locked On Warriors.
You are Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making Locked On Warriors your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get podcasts and on YouTube. That's where every live show is. I'm coming to you live from West Sonoma County. That's where the Locked On Warriors podcast studio is. And we're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. You can follow me on Threads, folks. That is the new text-based application created by Instagram. At Dog Wild, that is at DOGWILD, super easy, 7 letters, 1 word, Dog Wild. If you're still on Twitter, you can follow me there at Dog Surf Roadshow, and this program is on Twitter at Locked On Dubs. I was hoping Kylan Mills would join me. This has turned into a chaotic week for her, so she will be joining me at some point. I just don't know when. Excuse me for that, but she'll be back with me soon. Just turned into a very chaotic week for her. So I'm manning the ship solo, but there's a lot to talk about. I'm going to obviously get to the chat when I can. But first things first, I got to talk about Chris Paul because when the Warriors first made the trade to acquire him, the thinking was that he would be a great player to come off the bench for the team. We've heard commentary regarding how valuable he could be as a mentor to Jonathan Kuminga and Moses Moody off the bench. He's talked about his how adept he is at the pick and roll with Dario Saric. And so the thinking is Chris Paul, 6th man, comes off the bench. You leave your starting 5 that had the highest net rating in the NBA last year intact. Great. And then Mark Medina, my boy, he doesn't come on the show because he's under a contractual obligation with Fox Sports. They have exclusive rights to him. Otherwise, he would be a regular guest on this program. But Mark Medina, I don't know if he was on Fox Sports Radio. I don't know where he said this, but he's been getting a lot of grief. And look, when you poorly report something like this, it is deserved. Medina came out and said that Chris Paul is going to be okay coming off the bench. And so the thought was great. Okay, so Chris Paul is going to come off the bench. This idea that Mark Spears of ESPN floated out when the trade first happened, that Chris Paul was going to be a starter and that Kevon Looney was going to come off the bench. I mean, that seemed pretty wild because you're turning a team that's already fairly small into the most diminutive team in the NBA. Where Stephen Curry becomes your shooting guard at 6'3". So for a moment there, I think people were kind of like calm and accepting of the fact that Chris Paul was going to come off the bench. But then he got asked about it. I don't know who asked him exactly. Let me pull up this clip here. But the Warriors have been doing some press in Vegas. That's where, Summer League is going on. And Chris Paul actually was introduced there, including his jersey. He's going to wear number 3. And he answered some questions from the media, and the question of Chris Paul's role came into play. And his answer, I think, surprised a lot of people. Here's what Chris Paul had to say.
Following up on that, I mean, presumably you'd be coming off the bench playing with the second unit that's a lot younger than the Warriors of the past have been with JK and Moses. Just what do you think of their depth, their bench players that you might be playing alongside?
You coach?
No.
Oh, okay. Well, I don't know what the situation is going to be yet. You know what I mean? So I think that'll be for us to figure out once we get going.
You've never come off the bench in your entire career. Is that something that you'd be willing to do?
Like I said, it'll be a conversation for us when camp starts or whatnot. But me and Steve have talked or whatnot. That ain't something that you be like, "What up, man? Where you start when you coming up?" You know what I mean? So I think we'll figure all that stuff out in camp.
Following up on that, I mean,
And look, first of all, that's not exactly the answer maybe you want to hear from Chris Paul when it comes to him perhaps being open-minded, him being maybe like team-centric. Even if the fact is, based off that attribution, he has not had a conversation with the coaching staff. There was a little snide, pointed commentary in there about, well, are you the coach? Look, there are certain players in this game that just take an incredible amount of pride when it comes to being a starter. Klay Thompson is another one. Steve Kerr will not dare broach the subject of Klay Thompson coming off the bench. And now here's Chris Paul, who in his entire career has never come off the bench. I mean, we're talking about his rookie days where, I mean, he's been in this league for, nearly 20 years. Not once ever has he come off the bench. This has been a player who has started 100% of his games. And so whether or not that's factoring into this, the fact that he's used to being a starter, the fact that, certain players, maybe they view being a starter versus coming off the bench as like a status symbol type thing, whatever the reasoning is, certain NBA players just don't like the idea of coming off the bench. And Chris Paul, based off that attribution, is clearly one of them. Doesn't want to think about it at all. And so, by the way, Ginji Gok, I'm looking at the chat for the first time today, writes, he looks fat. I don't think he's out of shape. I think that was just a camera angle. For any aspiring media professionals or broadcasters, always remember, have the camera look down on you. If it looks up on you, now you get that double chin. If you got one suddenly becoming prominent, you always want the camera to go down on you so the chin looks more sharp. You look thinner. So I'm guessing it was a camera angle thing. But the bottom line is, Chris Paul's, I don't think this is going to be really a debate when the season starts. The Warriors, their starting five is not big to begin with. Look, Klay Thompson's big for a shooting guard, but Draymond Green is not big for a power forward or a frontline player. Kevon Looney is not big. He's not small, but he's not big for a frontline player. If Chris Paul is your starter, I mean, that is such a diminutive team that opposing teams are going to take full advantage of that, posting players up left and right, attacking the paint, not having to worry about your shot being blocked. That is a recipe for abuse, for elderly abuse, given how old the Warriors are. So that cannot be an option. And again, kind of weird of Chris Paul to not give like a team-centric, to not give the diplomatic answer there, which is that, if that's what's needed for me for the team, I'll do whatever it takes. No, he did not give an answer like that. His first response was, "Are you the coach?" So the dude was just not stoked about it, even touching that subject. I agree with this sentiment that it's not who starts, it's who finishes. I wholeheartedly agree with that notion. But clearly, Chris Paul and Klay Thompson don't agree with that notion. They don't want to come off the bench. So, and Retzel, you're absolutely right. When it comes to net rating, Retzel writes, the Dubs starting five was the best in the NBA last year. That is true. Now, the antithesis to that, the counterpoint to that is the Dubs starting five also didn't play together since, or last played together in December. Andrew Wiggins started dealing with injuries, and then he had his issues with his dad. Stephen Curry was dealing with injuries. So those five did not play together. The five you're referring to being Steph, Klay, Wiggins, Dre, and Looney since December. So the sample size for that net rating is fairly small. It's fairly outdated. And then when they did come back together finally in the postseason, they got their asses kicked by the Lakers and didn't exactly light things up against the Kings, barely surviving that series. So I don't know how much we can look into that net rating stat for the starting five for last year. But regardless, we'll see what happens with Chris Paul. But I really hope that does not become an issue this season, because if that does become an issue this season, then this season is just done. I mean, I don't. They're in my opinion, if this team wants to win a title, they're hanging on by a thread in terms of contention status based on the moves they've done so far. And if you got a disgruntled Chris Paul who's not going to be happy coming off the bench, forget it. I mean, this whole season is just going to be one thing after another if that's the case. But hopefully things will be resolved. Now, Zach Schmeltz writes real quick that Chris Paul can be traded August 6th, so he might not even be here to start the season. I don't know if that is going to happen. I understand that it's a possibility in theory, but I look, they brought Chris Paul in here for a reason, and that is to anchor that second unit. So it would shock me if they traded him again. But you're right. It was about chemistry. It was about getting that Jordan Poole contract off the books, and that player who was clearly disgruntled off the books. Whether or not his disgruntledness, if that's a word, has merit, that's a whole other discussion. He clearly has a right to be upset given his teammate cold cocked him. But so that's a Chris Paul situation. That's going on. That's what's going on there. When we come back, though, there's quite a few free agents still available. And we got to touch on that because the Warriors do have one and possibly two roster spots open. And the question is, what are they going to do with those open spaces? I mean, are they going to use it on a Lester Quinones? That is a move that I do not endorse at all. I'll explain why. It's nothing against Lester, but if you're giving your 14th spot to Lester Quinones, you've got some huge issues. I'll explain what I'm talking about in just a moment. Also got to talk about the Warriors' first round pick, Brandin Podziemski, and his performance through the first 3 Summer League games, leaving a lot to be desired. I think it's the best way to describe that. There's going to be a lot to talk about on the show. First, got to give some love to Bird Dogs, one of the fairly newer sponsors of Locked On Warriors. And let me get their overlay here. And look, one of the things about Bird Dogs that I absolutely love is that they are the post-pandemic style setters, the trend setters, the fashion setters. Bird Dogs is all about 2 things: looking good and feeling good. It's a clothing line for the gentlemen out there. They sent me a sample. I'm really stoked that they did because instead of trying to, make things up with a script, I'm telling you legitimately how I felt from wearing their clothes, and I loved it. The bottom line with Bird Dogs is this: you're not only going to feel amazing, right? If you're like me and you're home most of the time, you're a total homebody, you work from home. So comfort is a massively huge variable to consider for what you're going to wear. Bird Dogs has you covered in that regard. It is super comfortable, but here's the best part. I'm not only incredibly comfortable wearing Bird Dogs, but if I want to step outside my house, I'm not going to embarrass myself. I'm actually going to look good in the process. And that's what Bird Dogs is all about. It's shorts, it's shirts, it's pants, whatever they got. It's all about feeling amazing with cloud knit fabric that looks like khaki but stretches so you get this way slimmer fit. And at the same time, again, you're looking phenomenal. You look good. And not to mention, they also include this amazing and free Yeti style tumbler that comes with every order. I got mine. I use it everywhere I go. So go to birddogs.com/lockedonnba or enter the promo code LOCKEDONNBA for a free Yeti style tumbler. Again, they sent me one of those. I absolutely love it. It's my home for my beverages. Go to birddogs.com/lockedonnba or use the promo code LOCKEDONNBA for a free Yeti style tumbler. You won't want to take your Bird Dogs off. We promise you.
You are Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making Locked On Warriors your first listen every day. Everydayers, follow us on Twitter at Locked On Dubs. Kylan Mills, again, who was supposed to join me today, last minute scratch. She's going to join me soon, obviously. And this summer is going to be full of guests. And when Summer League is over, that is officially the dead time for the NBA. And that's usually when I pick up my phone and start making calls. Rick Bucher, already spoke to him. He's going to come on the show soon. Going to hopefully get Mark Jones back on the show soon. It should be a great summer. The ultimate goal is to get some Warriors players and or coaches. We'll see how that goes. But again, just follow us on Twitter at Locked On Dubs. Follow me on Twitter at Dog Surf Roadshow. And I'm now on Threads, my preference for social media. So follow me there. That is at Dog Wild. Let's see what's going on in the comments real quick. Writes Corey Joseph is not leading anything. Corey Joseph is your third string point guard. You're not really relying on him for much. So I don't know what that was in reference to, but Corey Joseph is fine for your third string point guard. He's a legitimate veteran. Doesn't really have many holes in his game. He's not necessarily going to light it up, but he's not going to make mistakes either. He can play defense. He's a fantastic three-point shooter. I will say this. He's a lot better than his predecessor. Retzel writes, and I agree with you, the second unit right now looks good. The bench is going to feature Chris Paul. It's going to feature Dario Saric. It's going to feature Gary Payton II, who I'm going to talk about in just a moment. So it was a great report about him. Jonathan Kuminga, whose time hopefully is now, and Moses Moody. And that's one of the things we have to really hope for this year, folks, is that their minutes are not going to be jerked around like they were last year. It is time for Kuminga and Moody to be full-time members of this rotation, getting 20, if not minimum 25 minutes a night. They've earned it, they deserve it, and they have the talent for it. So I hope we see them play. Ernie B. Hernandez, defending Chris Paul, most likely writes, it wasn't Chris Paul's idea to be traded to the Warriors and be demoted to the second unit. And that's where, like, I don't see it as a demotion. To me, it's all about who's finishing the games, but a lot of players do see that starting role as that promotion / demotion. They do see it that way. It is weird, potentially, maybe not, but Chris Paul certainly sees it like that. I want to quickly talk about those Summer League because the Warriors with the 19th pick in the draft, and Kurt Porter, please let me know where you saw that report. Kurt Porter is writing in the chat that the Warriors are waiting for Rudy Gay. I don't know if that's true. It wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. I just don't know if he's cooked. He's old. That is not a spring chicken. Far from it. I just don't know if Rudy Gay is, are you bringing him in to replace Iguodala? I don't know. That wouldn't excite me. David A., you are correct. Kenny Atkinson is still on the coaching staff. I don't know if that's a good thing or not. Poison Clan 1707. I've read that as well. Although who knows what you can believe with a report like this, that Mike Dunleavy Jr. is not in a rush to sign another player. That might be true. We saw what happened last year, at least with the two-way players, where we unfortunately, 1 minute it was going to be Lester Quinones and it was going to be Quindary Weatherspoon, all set to go as your two-way players. I was loving that. That was, to me, when everything started spiraling. It was when the team made the last minute decision to go with Anthony Lamb and Ty Jerome as the two-way players. And I remember thinking to myself, too, before that decision was made, Ty Jerome played, I believe, in the last Summer League game and made this costly turnover near the end of the game. And I'm thinking to myself the whole time, well, at least he's not going to be on the team anymore. And then the very next day, Quindary Weatherspoon was replaced with Ty Jerome. And to me, that was the beginning of the precipitous slide of the Golden State Warriors last year. But the Warriors drafted Brandin Podziemski. And in the 3 Summer League games he's played in so far, it's been, like some things he's doing looks good. I think he's a solid ball handler. He looks more like a point guard out there. His stat line in the 3 games against the Dallas Mavericks, this was today. Side note, NBA TV, get your crap together. This has been going on for I don't know how many years, where NBA TV is only available on, I think, like Dish and maybe one other cable provider. They're not available on Hulu Live. I know people have told me they're available on YouTube, YouTube's live TV subscription, but I've already got the Hulu Live TV set up. I got the family thing going. And point being, it's like, why are you not available most places? NBA, get your you-know-what together and make yourself available. Market your brand, please. So I couldn't watch this game. You had to have NBA TV to watch today's game when they played the Mavericks. They lost this game 98-96. The Warriors are now 0-3 in Summer League. But Brandin Podziemski is one of the players I'm personally taking a very close look at. I would love to see Trayce Jackson-Davis. His hamstring is reportedly healing, but he has missed his 3rd Summer League game in a row. He has yet to play. We have yet to see him. He also missed the 2 California Classic games. So Brandin Podziemski has been my large focus in terms of studying his play, seeing how he is. And look, he can pass the ball. He can handle the ball. His motor's solid. You kind of see from watching him play why he averaged over 8 rebounds a game as a 6'4" guard at Santa Clara. But he also was drafted, under the premise that he's a lights-out shooter. He was a 43% three-point shooter in Santa Clara. Now, this is where the competition can get a little sketchy when it comes to who Brandin Podziemski played against. Santa Clara is not in what you would call a highly competitive, top-grade conference. They're not playing these elite college teams, so who knows what the competition really was as Podziemski was setting up to shoot 43% from 3. Was he completely wide open? Was it just that much easier for him? The competition is a lot more stiff right now, and his shooting has been abysmal. In today's game, he was 1 for 10 from the field, not from beyond the arc, from the field. 1 for 10. He shot 10%. Now, he did have 7 assists. He did have 5 rebounds, but 1 for 10. He had 5 points total. I don't know how he had 5 points total when he had 3 free throws. So something's off with this box score unless something else happened. That is really weird. But nonetheless, not good. Not good. 1 for 10 in 32 minutes of play. Not good. I couldn't watch the game because it was on NBA TV, but I heard he also missed a potential game-tying layup at the end of the game. I'll take a look at the chat to see if anyone else has any comments on that. Ginji Gok writes that he was getting isolated every possession. I'm sorry. But anyway, so now, and Salvador Estrada writes that the Warriors could have also taken Chris Murray. That is true. We had Rafael Barlow on this show who he endorsed the idea of Keegan Murray's twin brother being drafted. But when I saw Cam Whitmore fall to number 19, Cam Whitmore is someone who's projected to be top 10. Some people had him going top 5. The ESPN crew who was broadcasting the draft, I think Jay Billis was there along with JJ Redick and some others, and they all were clamoring for Cam Whitmore when he was still available for the 19th pick for the Golden State Warriors. This is a tough-minded, physically tough player, technically listed as a guard, but he's more like a small forward. Maybe with the Warriors, he'd be playing power forward. And real quick here, the Brandin Podziemski, I'll get to the Cam Whitmore numbers in a second, but the Warriors did not want him. Mike Dunleavy Jr. had Brandin Podziemski slotted number 11 on his draft board. And this also raises another concern about the Warriors scouting department. I've had insiders tell me that the Warriors have the most understaffed scouting department in the NBA. If what I heard is true, and I hope someone clarifies this, but I've heard that they have a staff of 4 people total for their scouting department, meaning these are the folks that are flying around. These are the folks actually scouting and researching individual players. And my understanding is the Warriors are not investing in that side of things. And someone was jokingly, I think on Twitter the other day saying, well, Santa Clara is just down the street. It's in their backyard. And that's probably why they went with Brandin Podziemski, because they don't have anyone scouting players and he's super close. There might be some truth to that. Like that was a joke, but I literally heard that concern from 2 different insiders a few weeks ago as serious notions that because of Santa Clara's proximity, it's easier to scout and observe the player, and that could have been a factor for Brandin Podziemski. I pray that's not the case. I hope that's not the case. But the Warriors do have a very light scouting department. And Brandin Podziemski in the game against the Pelicans in Summer League, his stat line was the following. He played 33 minutes, had 10 points on 3 of 16 shooting. All right. So he was 1 for 10 against the Mavericks, 3 for 16 against the Pelicans, did have 10 assists, did have 9 rebounds. Okay. So there are some positives here, but he was also a minus 12 in the plus minus. And then in the third Summer League game they played, this was, I believe, the first one against the LA Lakers. Brandin Podziemski played 30 minutes in that game, had 9 points on 3 of 10 shooting. So his shooting's regressing through Summer League. He was 1 for 4 from deep in that game. But again, he also had 11 rebounds in that game, only had 2 assists. So the point is, look, this is Summer League. We can't read too much into things. But at the same time, this is your audition. This is your time as a young player, if you're in Summer League, to shine and show your teams and show your fan bases what you're made of and why your team invested in you. Now, what has Cam Whitmore been doing playing for the Houston Rockets in his 3 games so far in Summer League? Well, against the OKC Thunder, he played 34 minutes, scored 16 points, grabbed 8 rebounds. His shooting wasn't great. He was 1 for 8 from beyond the arc. He was 6 for 14 from the field. But he was also a plus 14 in the plus minus, and they won the game. In another game in Summer League, Cam Whitmore played 32 minutes, scored 14 points. This was against the Portland Trailblazers, had 11 rebounds. Again, not a great shooting night, still better than Brandin Podziemski's, was 5 for 18 from the field, 1 for 6 from 3, but he was a plus 9 in the plus minus. Again, scored 14 points, and the Rockets won. And in the third Summer League game for the Rockets, they played the Detroit Pistons. Cam Whitmore played 29 minutes in that game. This one, he did shoot well. He was 9 for 16 from the field, 3 for 7 from beyond the arc, scored 21 points, was a +2 in the plus minus, and the Rockets won that game. So again, summer league means absolutely nothing. It doesn't count toward the standings. The players we see come preseason, come regular season, could be night and day from what we're seeing right now in summer league. But some patterns do emerge sometimes from summer league, and so far, it's, again, this is just through 3 summer league games, but Cam Whitmore is looking pretty damn good. He does look, I've heard multiple quote unquote experts / analysts say this, that Cam Whitmore looks like a men among boys. And I just hope the Warriors don't regret whiffing on that. It seemed blatantly obvious to me when Whitmore fell to 19 that the Warriors should have taken him. He was taken with the very next pick by the Houston Rockets. Brandin Podziemski, meanwhile, when it comes to rebounding and when it comes to assists, he's doing good. But so far, he looks like a glorified, slightly bigger Nico Mannion. And I really hope the Warriors did not swing and miss with the number 19 pick in that regard. Got a lot more to talk about on the show. I'm going to address, obviously, the chat, and I got to talk about free agents. There's a lot to discuss. First, I got to give some love to a very important sponsor of this program, and that's BetterHelp. And the reason why I say it's important is because of the service that they provide and because of how important mental health and seeking quality mental health is. Again, today's show is this episode is sponsored, brought by BetterHelp. Give online therapy a try at betterhelp.com/lockedonwarriors and get on your way to being your best self. And look, I mean, I don't know if you're like me, but at least since the pandemic, I sometimes get anxiety issues, still do every now and again. Life in general is just super hard. And therapy is important. It's, your brain in a lot of ways is like a muscle. You got to not only exercise it, and when I say exercise your brain, I mean reading, I mean actually doing things to improve your intelligence quotient, but it's also an organ there that needs healing sometimes if it gets damaged, whether it's emotionally, whether it's literally physically. And that's where therapy can be a huge help for you. And with BetterHelp, you're getting private service, you're getting online service so that you have flexibility in terms of where you're getting your therapy, when you're getting your therapy. It's relatively affordable. You have options when it comes to health insurance. Again, it's entirely online. It's super convenient. It's super flexible. It's also very important to connect with your therapist. So if you decide to proceed, you subscribe to BetterHelp and BetterHelp, I'm sorry, and your first therapist, let's say, is someone you don't get along with, you can quickly switch therapists and keep going until you find someone that you feel comfortable with, that you connect with. All you have to do is just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist, and you could switch therapists anytime with no additional charge. That's a huge perk. So let therapy be your map with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/lockedonnba today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedonnba.
You are Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making Locked On Warriors your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get podcasts. You can follow me on Threads at Dog Wild. You can also follow me on Twitter at Dog Surf Roadshow. And yeah, Lil Panda, I totally agree with you. Summer League is just that. It's an exhibition. It's mostly young players. But again, you would like to see your players showing some growth and some development and some positives, especially when you're investing in a number 19 pick in a player. Now, free agency. Okay, the Warriors right now have 13 roster spaces completely filled up. All right. And I'm trying to read the chat here real quick to see if there's anything I should address right now. All right, so we're going to proceed. Now, let's review the Warriors roster real fast, okay? Your point guards, Stephen Curry, Chris Paul, Corey Joseph. Solid. Old, but solid. You got 2 future Hall of Famers in there. Steph is still in his prime. I hope Chris Paul has a semblance of his prime remaining. Corey Joseph is a solid backup. You're great. Off to a great start. Your shooting guards, Klay Thompson, one of the greatest ever. Hopefully he regains his shooting form. Hopefully the conditioning program he's currently going through produces better results, and we don't see a repeat of what we saw last year which was an abysmal shooting performance in the postseason and very poor shooting from 2. Close range shooting has not been a strength of Klay Thompson's this past year. Moses Moody is his backup. And let's really hope we see some really significant minutes this year from Moses Moody. Small forward, Andrew Wiggins. Have to love that. Hopefully he's healthy this year. Hopefully we see him play all 82 or close to that. Hopefully we see the Iron Man that we've been accustomed to. And quite possibly, I don't think it's hyperbolic to say this anymore, that Andrew Wiggins is your second best player on the Warriors. Because of the fact he's a two-way player. He does have a scoring prowess. His numbers have gone down a little bit since he came to the Warriors from Minnesota. But he can score. Wiggins is Wiggs. He's a phenomenal player. And we're going to see Jonathan Kuminga hopefully get a bigger role this coming year. Power forward, Draymond Green. We got Trace Jackson Davis, who we have yet to see in Summer League, but a lot of excitement surrounding that young man. Again, who fits the traditional a formula for how the Warriors used to succeed in the draft. Pick players who have 3 to 4 years experience. They're polished. They're ready to go. So hopefully Trace Jackson Davis, not to mention being the progeny of Dale Davis, is a phenomenal help there. Your centers are Kevon Looney and Dario Saric. Saric, by the way. I looked up his proper pronunciation for his last name. It's Dario. Instead of Super Mario, it's Super Dario. But his last name is not Saric, it's Saric. The S is actually pronounced like an SH. So Dario Saric is your backup center. And then on top of that, you have Gary Payton II. You have Brandin Podziemski. And I feel like I'm forgetting one of the players. Did I ever say Gary Payton II? I did. I'm forgetting about one more player that the Warriors have. But whatever. So they got 2 spaces remaining. Maybe 1. Possibly 2. I don't like the idea of Lester Quinones taking up that 14th roster spot. And the main reason why is because you don't know for certain what you're getting with him. He's not a polished product. He's not a finished product. And you don't need to use that 14th spot on a player who will take a 2-way this year. Save that 14th spot for next season. Use him on a 2-way. And instead, use that 14th and maybe your 14th and 15th roster spot on some legitimate talent that's still out there. One player that I know, Retzel, Jermichael Green is not still on the roster. AC, I did say Kuminga. I'm trying to figure out who the 13th player is. I'm still forgetting. And Corey. No, I said Corey Joseph. I can't remember who I left out. But regardless, a player who's out there right now, and a player who has not gotten any offers beyond the veteran minimum, is Christian Wood. Christian Wood, based on his skill set, based on his playing style, based on his athleticism and size, would be perfect for this Golden State Warriors team. He would be a lights out player. He would not only get so many open lanes to the basket because of all the space that this roster creates, but he would be getting rebounds galore. He would be getting putbacks galore. He would be a savage beast. Now, Douglas Mikes writes, Christian Wood is Kelly Oubre Redux, except Christian Wood is not a wing. Christian Wood is not a ball handler. Christian Wood's job would be rebound, put the ball back. That's it. Okay, you're not relying on Christian Wood for corner threes. He's not an ISO type player who wants to dribble the ball a lot. Xavier Hill, I disagree that Christian Wood has no defense. First of all, defense is a team a concept. It's even if you struggle individually, if you're coached properly and if you're in unison with the 4 of the players on the court, you can be a good defender and your team can still be a solid defense if you buy in. Now, if you're someone like Jordan Poole, who is a traffic cone, but you're also 6'4", that's a problem because you have no size to back up your lack of effort and lack of intensity. When you're someone like Christian Wood, who's near 7 feet, who's an athletic freak, who's a natural shot blocker, totally different story. And look, regardless of what your criticism is, and Douglas Mikes, there's an old adage, don't let perfect be the enemy of good. You're not going to get a perfect player who's still out there. So if you don't like Christian Wood, sorry, man, but I don't know who's better as an option out there right now. He would be phenomenal. And Genji Gok, I don't care if he couldn't get time in the Mavericks. Do not look at the Mavericks as a model of success. Just because a player did not get minutes on the Mavericks does not mean he's a bad player. JaVale McGee can't get on the court for the Mavericks either. If he's available in the buyout market, the Warriors should grab him immediately. And Kurt Porter, 6'9", 6'10", whatever he is. What's his wingspan? It's probably like 7'2", 7'3". He's a long, athletic freak, and I would absolutely love him on the Golden State Warriors. Now, Al Cian writes that if he didn't play for Jason Kidd, he ain't playing for Kerr. Maybe, I don't know. And so that probably kills the whole concept of him coming to the Warriors. I'm just telling you from my observation skills, if I was the GM of the Warriors, I would not wait another second. I would put Christian Wood on this roster, and I would tell Steve Kerr, deal with it, find time for him, make this work, because he's an incredibly talented player. But that is me. So Christian Wood would be phenomenal. Now, there's two other players out there that are fairly new in terms of free agent ideas. One of them is a player that I'm not super familiar with. I did a little research on him. His name is Harry Giles. He's out of Duke, 6'10", 7'3" wingspan. He's 25 years of age. He's been out of the league for, I think, a year or two. This kid is an athletic freak. From what I've seen, from what I researched, would be absolutely phenomenal. I would love him. I would love him on the Warriors. I don't think he would be a bad call. And then another player, who has been, and he's actually been linked to the Warriors. Reports are that the Warriors have shown interest in a private workout that he's going to set up for various teams. And that is a former Golden State Warrior in Glenn Robinson III, whose dad was Glenn Robinson, the former number one pick. Glenn Robinson III is still young. He's 29 years of age. He's been out of the league the last 2 years. It originally started because of injuries and just kind of extended to where it is now, where he hasn't played in 2 years, but he wants to come back. He knows the Warriors system. He's smart. He's got a high basketball IQ. I wouldn't mind him at all. So those are some players in regards to maybe being linked to the Golden State Warriors. I'm trying to see in the chat any other names. Yeah, Glenn Robinson III would be excellent. So, and the point is, that is why Lester Quinones, I'm not thrilled about the idea of him getting a guaranteed spot, just because you can still keep him for the two-way. Like, why use up those spaces when you could have him and have Glenn Robinson III, or have him and have Christian Wood? And the Warriors, by the way, look at that big ass mosquito. And the Warriors, by the way, let's hope they use that 15th spot. I mean, this is an old roster. You're going to get injuries. You're going to have people missing time. So I hope they go all out and sign 15. I highly doubt it, because every additional roster space they fill, besides costing approximately $2 million for the veteran minimum, that's also going to cost you times 7.5 approximately for each dollar that you spend. So any veteran that you add is really going to cost the team closer to $14 million, maybe even $16 million than just two. Kurt Porter writes, Hassan Whiteside, I don't know if the Warriors would take a flyer on him. He's older. I wouldn't mind him. He's a very traditional center, tough rebounder, tough defender. So I'm not throwing Hassan Whiteside out as a bad idea. I would not mind him. But I just don't know if the Warriors would actually go for him. And Dwight Howard is another player of that mold, where I think Dwight would be a fantastic pickup. You got to have someone to deal with Nikola Jokic. I still don't know what the Warriors' answer is for that, but Dwight Howard would be okay in that role. And but unfortunately, from what I've heard, the Warriors don't really have any interest. Aaron Baines, Douglas Mikes, yes, is still alive, but he just came back from a career-threatening injury. I don't know how healthy he is. I mean, if Aaron Baines becomes available and the Warriors get him, I wouldn't hate it. I just don't know how much he's going to give you this soon. Now, and Boogie Cousins, word man, I totally agree. Boogie Cousins is actually playing right now in Puerto Rico. Look, I think Boogie Cousins would be a phenomenal pickup. But again, the speculation for years now is that Steve Kerr and Boogie Cousins do not get along. And it's not necessarily a personal thing, but my understanding is Steve Kerr does not want Boogie back on the Warriors. Regardless of how you feel about that, that is where we're at. So I would love Christian Wood. He's still out there. No one has offered him anything more than the veteran minimum. If he's, that's my preference. So, take that for what it's worth. A couple of things to quickly talk about on the show today before we start wrapping things up. There was a report, I believe Shayna Rubin published this in one of her notebooks, talking about the Warriors had, again, they're in Vegas right now because of Summer League, and so a lot of the front office is there. A lot of the veterans are there. There's a clip, by the way, of Stephen Curry and Jonathan Kuminga hanging out together. Please give me more of that. If Stephen Curry takes Kuminga under his wing as in a protege type role, forget it. It's over. I honestly have been wondering why it's taken this long to see a camaraderie between those two in terms of Steph taking on this mentorship role. I absolutely love seeing that. They were sitting together courtside at a summer league game, chatting it up. I think they had like similar hats on. Loved it. Give me that all day, every day. But some other reports are that Gary Payton II, I think, look, if you have two eyes and you follow basketball, it was fairly obvious Gary Payton II was not the same player in the postseason last year that he was 2 seasons ago. Whether or not it was the abductor injury, the abdomen injury, whatever is plaguing him, who knows? But he supposedly looks a lot better. Shayna Rubin of the San Jose Mercury News reporting that Gary Payton II strongly resembling more of the player from 2022 that helped the Warriors win a title than the player from last year. And if we get a healthy, springy Gary Payton II, dude, all the better. All the better. He's a phenomenal athlete. Absolutely love the fact that he's on this team. And then Moses Moody is back in practice. I guess apparently Moses Moody, Chris Paul, and Gary Payton II were all practicing together at the Warriors practice facilities in Las Vegas. So that's a pretty cool report there. And I think that's it. Let's go to the chat. Any last thoughts we have to touch on before we call it a wrap? Douglas Mikes, I agree with you that Gary Payton II needs to get back in form, but it looks like he is. Alcian writes, excited for Kuminga and Moody. They'll play more. They won't have many players in front of them. I wholeheartedly agree. I cannot emphasize enough. If those two are not a permanent part of the rotation, the Golden State Warriors they have no chance of winning a title. No chance in hell. In fact, Rick Barry and I, the Hall of Famer, did a show. We host a show together called The Rick Barry Show. And I want to share this clip of Rick's thoughts on the Golden State Warriors in terms of their world championship status and contention. Here is what Rick had to say. Warning, trigger warning. You might not like what you have to hear.
I mean, so who knows? Right now, you would have to say this team doing stuff with what they have. I don't see them having a chance to repeat as champions.
No, same. I don't either. Their tallest player is 6'9", Rick. What's going on there? Why do you think there's
well, they're 6'9", but he can't score.
Correct. There are 2 6'9" guys who are not scorers. You're right. That was before the Dario Saric signing. So I'm a lot more optimistic now. Rick still feels like they need more. We'll see what happens. I do think if the Warriors settle with this 14th roster spot, they're in trouble. They're not better than the Nuggets. They're not better than the Lakers. They're not better than the Suns. I don't even know if they're better than the Kings. I mean, the Kings pushed them to 7 games. The Kings got better this offseason. Now, so did the Warriors, but did they really get that much better? They got older. So what they do with that 14th roster spot is important to me, because when you look at the Warriors' history in terms of their 4 titles and who they rolled with, like some people have this notion that the Warriors or that teams in general, like if you go beyond the 8th, 9th, 10th spot on the rosters, you're just dealing with players that are inconsequential. When it comes to the Golden State Warriors, the added strength in numbers rings true. You look at, for example, just 2022, the championship year, they're 13th, 14th, 15th guys were James Wiseman, who would have played, but he was injured, Juan Toscano-Anderson, who was playing significant minutes, and Damian Lee, who was playing significant minutes. You go through every one of these title teams, and 1 through 14, 1 through 15, those players matter. Those players help. That is Warriors championship basketball. So if you're counting on a team that's 10 deep, that's 11 deep, I don't think that's going to cut it, man. So whatever they decide on with this 14th roster spot, and again, Christian Wood is out there, Glenn Robinson the third is out there. You folks have named some fantastic names, whether it's Boogie Cousins, Dwight Howard, Hassan Whiteside. I don't know how excited I'd be, but I'd rather have him than wouldn't. I'll say that. They're gonna have to still try to get better, and I don't think it would hurt to get some size as well. Salvador Estrada writes, the reporters need to hold Kerr to the fire and ask him why he does not like to play big, tall vets who can defend and rebound. I've tried to do that myself, in all honesty. Unfortunately, Steve Kerr he's a media savant. He is incredibly intelligent when it comes to giving answers that have no substance to them whatsoever, but they shut the reporter up. And a clear example of that, for example, is if you bring up with him, like, why didn't you play Kuminga in the Lakers series? He'll tell you, well, he didn't fit our matchups, right? I think he used that as an excuse. How can you follow up on that? I mean, outside of turning it into an argument, which is not only not going to get you anywhere, but you can't really go do a back and forth at a press conference. He's just, this is who he is. He doesn't like playing bigs. He has his way of doing things. You've heard my opinion on it, and this is where we are. So, Rich Dub, and I agree with you that I don't understand why they refuse to add length and height. Kurt Porter adds Willie Hernan Gomez. That's a player that is like a meh for me. Like, he gives you size, but he's not giving you much else. Douglas Mikes, I do appreciate your optimism. By the way, Genji Gok also adds Nerlens Noels. I would not mind him as a player either, as a possible bench piece. Douglas Mikes writes, I think this team has what it takes to compete this year. You never know what can happen, but honestly, it feels like a transition year before possibly a pivot next summer. Maybe. Very curious what's going to happen. I agree, Latasha, with you that this team still needs size. Wholeheartedly agree. Dario Saric is 6'10", 6'11", with some good shoes. But, you're not deep with size. And the NBA has gone a lot bigger while the Warriors have not followed suit. Columbus O'Banner lists some names that I like. Christian Wood, JaVale McGee, Hassan Whiteside would be great pickups. Wholeheartedly agree with you there. Nick Fensky, I don't have any word on how the Harry Giles workout looked. But if I hear anything or see anything, I'll either report it on the next show or follow me on social media. I'm on the Threads tip. Threads is where I'm at, folks. It's less vile, I think is the best way to put it, in terms of a social media platform. There's moderation there. You don't have white nationalists like completely dominating the home feed. Dude, Twitter's like really repulsive these days. So follow me on Threads at Dogwild. I am still on Twitter at DogSurfRoadshow. I promise if I hear anything, I always publish it there before coming here to talk about it. Zach Schmelz, I love your attitude, man. That if the Warriors will win it all, since there's no Lamb and Jerome, that's a great point. That is a great point. I respect it. I commend it. I acknowledge it. Good call. Genji Gok writes, Clay's going to take all the shots since it's his contract year. Let's hope that's not the case. Chris Swish adds Bismack Biyombo. Would not mind him. No, he's a great big. He stands about 6'9", but he's a really tough individual. He is a traditional center. Has chemistry with Chris Paul, as you mentioned, from their days with the Suns. Yeah, I'm with you. I wouldn't mind it. I hope they do something. So, there we go. Thank you, everyone, as always. Again, I'm sorry if you're hoping to see Kylan. She was not last-minute snafu. She's a busy individual these days. Soccer is a very fun sport, and she played it in college, and I'm really happy for her that she's getting all these opportunities in that field. So she'll be back with me soon. But Salvador Estrada, I do agree with you that if Clay does become someone who's shot heavy, who selfishly plays without putting the team first, that would suck. That would be selfish. But Genji, thank you for watching and listening to the show. We'll be back at this soon. Again, and all this summer, there's going to be a lot of. I'm going to hopefully get some really big guests for the show, because soon we're going to enter a dead part of the year when it comes to basketball. It's the most depressing time of year. It's disgustingly hot outside, although I'm sure some of you love it. There's no basketball. The Bay Area doesn't have a WNBA team. I'd be all on board to follow the WNBA. We need a team here in the Bay Area. It's pretty crazy that there is not one here. Thank you, everyone. I see all the kind words. Thank you. RJ, I love your optimism. I do hope the Warriors get the job done. And I'm not ruling it out. I was actually thinking about it. Like, I'm in no position to make predictions at this point. I don't know if I will be. But if someone asked me, like gun to my head, who do you think is going to win the title right now? I don't think it would be a dumb thing to say the Golden State Warriors. Look, they just won the title 2 years ago. I do think they improved from last year. The Chris Paul signing does improve them if he stays healthy. The Dario Saric edition was huge. The Warriors had no one like him last year, so that was a phenomenal pickup. I'm very curious to see how Trace Jackson Davis turns out. Every report I've ever heard about him. If you didn't watch the Damon Bruce show from a couple weeks ago, go back on YouTube or your podcast platform and listen to that, because Damon Bruce is a Hoosier. He watches Indiana basketball. He watched every game of Trace Jackson Davis's at Indiana, and he raves about this kid. I also have another friend who went to IU, and similar sentiments. This was even before Damon. People who watch Indiana basketball love this kid, Trace Jackson Davis. So who knows? I mean, this team is better than last year. I'm feeling much more optimistic, but I really do hope they use that 14th spot for someone who's quality. And yeah, Chris Swish, I totally agree with you. The vibes will probably be better as well. I do agree with you there, especially if we see Kuminga and Moody play. The entire hope for this team this year, in my opinion, is Jonathan Kuminga taking a massive leap and turning into the type of player that Kawhi Leonard was for the Spurs in 2013, 2014. This young up-and-comer who gives a tremendous amount of support to an aging core that still has it. That's the formula. If the Warriors are going to do it, that's the formula. My concern remains, how are you going to beat the Nuggets? How are you going to beat the Lakers? The Suns, I think they'll beat the Suns, but the Suns are deep. When I see the Suns, by the way, it's never a Kevin Durant that scares me. Even Bradley Beal, he's a good player. That move was underrated for them to acquire Bradley Beal. But it's Devin Booker who scares me. That kid is good. He is phenomenal. Someday I think he's going to be known as one of the all-time greats. I don't like the idea of facing him. But in reality, the Lakers and the Nuggets scare me. And I just don't know yet how the Warriors are going to combat that. That's why I would not mind just getting one more big piece. So that's it. Have a great rest of the night, folks. Thank you for joining me, and we'll be at this soon. Follow me on Threads at Dog Wild. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.